travelers! On our last episode of Travel Rebooted, we toured the beautiful Redcliffe Village, a major town in the Kingdom of Ferelden in the land of Thedas. It was great to see all the upgrades they'd made over the years, really bringing the community forward into the Dragon Age. But as a contrast to all that modern civilization, this time we're heading out into the untamed, history-filled wilderness outside the city gates, known as the Hinterlands. Let's go! I'm not gonna lie, travelers. I was a little nervous about leaving Redcliffe Village. As much as I love seeing new places, roughing it isn't really my thing. And the less said about hiking, the better. But even in the city, the beauty of the land was obvious. I could see a gorgeous waterfall without even leaving my hotel, so armed with my guidebook of notable landmarks, I set out. The chunk of the Imperial Highway that crosses this part of the kingdom is known as the King's Highway. And it splits into the West Road that comes in from the mountains to the west, and the East Road that heads east into the rest of Ferelden. The settlement where the two roads cross is called, wait for it, the Crossroads. For bonus points, guess what the main road in the north part of Ferelden is called? It's the North Road. I'll give you a second to soak in those incredibly imaginative names. Fereldans are nothing if not practical. But don't let that fool you into thinking they're lacking in creativity altogether. Unless you're really looking for a restroom, the first thing you'll probably notice at the crossroads is the huge statue that towers over the village. The woman brandishing the sword is Tyrdda Bright-Axe, and her story is told through poems inscribed on 8 separate statues all across the region. Click the link in the description to see our side trip all about Tyrdda's fascinating tale. By the way, the Tyrdda sculptures aren't the only art in the Hinterlands. Keep your eyes peeled for hidden gems all over the area. I found this huge statue of what I assume is the prophet Andraste. A few sculptures I'm guessing are from the Tevinter invasion over 1,000 years ago. Some cave paintings steeped in symbolism. And whatever this is. Oh, and carvings of dogs. Lots of dogs. It's a Ferelden thing. I'll come back to that in a bit, but first, let's talk about some attractions you won't want to miss. Just outside of the crossroads, I toured the ruins of Calenhad's Foothold. My guidebook didn't have much to say about it, but judging by the name, I'd guess it was built around 400 years ago by Calenhad the Great during his successful attempt to capture Redcliffe Castle and become the first king of Ferelden. I could just picture him standing on the battlements in his enchanted armor, getting ready to lead the charge. Or something. Nearby, I visited the peaceful and picturesque Lake Luthias. The mountain-fed water was too cold for swimming, but it was nice to sit on the dock in the sun and listen to the waterfalls. I should note, though, the far end of Lake Luthias has an entrance into the Deep Roads, the underground realm first built by the dwarves, but lost to darkspawn and all kinds of monsters. The Deep Roads are extremely dangerous, and travelers are advised to keep their distance. To the northwest of the lake, I toured a much more recent construction, built by the previous Arl, or Lord, of Redcliffe, Eamon Garin, after Ferelden was freed from Orlesian rule. He called it Fort Connor after one of his fathers, and later gave his son the same name. Unfortunately, the structure was heavily damaged during the Fifth Blight. North of Fort Connor is the Witchwood. Despite the spooky name, the forest was lovely, even after all the fighting between the mages and the Templars. To be honest, I didn't say this to the Fereldans, but I kind of thought the magic pillars of ice were pretty. A ton of other areas begged to be explored, but by that point, I was tired of walking. Since I couldn't exactly just call an Uber, that meant I needed a horse. So I headed for Redcliffe Farms, the home of Ferelden's most famous stables. The owner, Horsemaster Dennett, wasn't there, but his daughter set me up with one of their carefully bred horses, a gentle and beautiful Ferelden forder named Blaze. Sienna was more than happy to give me some riding lessons, and I even tried a few impromptu races. I did pretty well, too, except for the time I got a little distracted by the head farmhand. A guy aptly named Braun. I may, possibly, have peeked in to take a photo before I left. That reminds me. For you single travelers hoping for a whirlwind vacation romance with a handsome guy, Ferelden is the place to be. Seriously. I'm just saying. Those Ferelden boys... Right, sorry. Anyway, where was I? Oh, right, bed. I mean, places to sleep. Alone. Like you do. There are no official inns in the Hinterlands, but I found a nice bed and breakfast tucked into the southeastern hills. On my map, it was labeled Winterwatch Tower, but the locals all called it Lornan's Exile. Apparently one of the previous Earls of Redcliffe was a very successful man, with a very lazy son named Lornan. After years of putting up with the kids partying and blowing his dad's money, the Earl built an isolated fort and sent his son to live there, saying he'd only come home when he got his act together and dealt with the area's bandit problem. From there, the story has two versions. One says Lornan turned over a new leaf and went back to Redcliffe victorious. The other, which is a lot more fun, says the guy who went home was actually a soldier who kinda looked like Lornan, while the real Lornan kicked back and relaxed in his comfy private castle for the rest of his life. In any case, what Winterwatch lacked in private rooms, it made up for in its lively tavern. The other place I stayed was, frankly, an amazing stroke of luck. I found an Airbnb listing for a grand forest villa that seemed way too cheap to be anything but a disaster, but it turned out the place was a timeshare and a bunch of shady guys had reserved it for the whole season and then just vanished before paying up all their fees. The caretaker was more than happy to recoup some of his losses, and I jumped at the chance to stay in such a beautiful place with such a great history. See, a couple hundred years ago, the Earl of Redcliffe was a guy named Jason Garin. As a noble, he'd had to get married to produce an heir, but his true love was a bard and swordsman named Sir Coram. Jason's wife, Arlessa Marguerite, was understanding, only asking that they avoid scandal by having the bard live somewhere else besides Redcliffe Castle. So the Earl built a beautiful villa for his love, and visited often enough that the locals made up a bawdy tavern song called Earl Jason's Ride, which, at face value anyway, is about the Earl hurrying home on horseback to get there before sunrise. My favorite part of the story, though, is that after the Earl's death, the Arlessa ordered that Sir Coram be allowed to stay in the villa for the rest of his days. When he finally died at the age of 90, she gave him funeral rites with full honors and dressed him in the Earl's own hunting cloak. Knowing the villa was the center of so much love and kindness only enhanced my stay, though the view certainly didn't hurt. The beauty of the landscape here is only enhanced by its abundant variety of flora and fauna. Before you rush out to experience nature, though, you should be aware of some dangers you might run into. First of all, southern Thedas is still struggling with the ongoing war between the mages and the Templars, and the Hinterlands are no exception. Fortunately, things have calmed down a lot since the Inquisition showed up, but the random troublemaker can still appear now and then. Unless you're a trained fighter or traveling with someone who is, my best advice is to stay out of sight. The same goes for the bandits and smugglers that inevitably turn up to take advantage of any land in turmoil. Some of the wildlife is friendlier than others, and I'll cover that in a second, but there's one other hazard to watch out for: Fade rifts. In the simplest terms, the Fade is the realm of spirits and demons that mages draw their power from. It lies over the land of Thedas like an invisible fog, only separated from the everyday world by a thing mages call the Veil. Anytime some major calamity happens, it weakens the Veil, sometimes so much that it tears open. With all the crazy stuff going on in Thedas right now, Fade rifts have appeared all over the place, spitting out all kinds of demons. This probably seems obvious, but if you see one, do not approach it under any circumstances. Even the strongest fighters can't win against an endless flood of enemies. The best course of action is to report the rift to the nearest Inquisition camp so they can send out a specialist. Anyway, now that we've got the disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about the good things you can find out in nature. Oh, before heading out, plant lovers may want to pick up a copy of the Botanical Compendium by Inez Arancia, a well-known Thedosian botanist. The most common plant you'll find here is elfroot, an herb valued for its healing properties. It's used for everything from pain relief to soothing indigestion. If you have a sharp eye, you might even see its much flashier cousin, royal elfroot. The orchid-like embryum has a cool backstory. A young girl had a serious lung condition and was expected to die, so her parents filled her room with flowers to cheer up her final days. To everyone's surprise, she started getting better. It turned out breathing in the embryum's scent had soothed her lungs and healed her. Spindleweed is another common plant and is usually found around water. It's commonly used in healing and strengthening tonics, offering protection from the elements. A prettier, but less friendly plant is also common near water, the blood lotus. Cheery name, right? It's nice to look at, but don't get too close. Concentrated lotus essence can cause hallucinations. If you're lucky, you might see crystal grace, a pale blue flower said to resemble upside-down crystal bells. And if you're unlucky, you might see a deep mushroom, a poisonous and creepy-looking fungus that carries the corruption of the darkspawn. That reminds me, this should go without saying, but you should never try to use or eat strange plants without consulting a physician, or at least a trained herbalist. Now that we've covered the flora, let's look at the fauna. It's kind of impossible to talk about Ferelden without talking about dogs. They're a huge part of Ferelden's national identity, as one might guess from seeing them on approximately 80 billion carvings and statues and paintings and banners and every other possible item. All dogs are valued, but not as much as the Mabari Warhound. Magically bred for intelligence, size, and strength, Mabari choose their own masters and stay with them for life. Historically, feral Mabari didn't exist. They were too loyal to run away and too valuable to just go missing. But on this trip, I saw a pack of stray Mabari, which told me a lot about how much Ferelden is struggling. A more common sight in the wilderness is the fox-like fennec, which is just the most adorable creature ever in history. With its cute little face and its soft fur and its big furry tail. I just want to pick it up and snuggle it because it's so cute and fuzzy and just so cute. What? On the farm, you'll see a fair number of druffalo, a large furry bovine used for farm work and raised for meat and hides. Another source of food and leather is the ram, which I saw almost everywhere in the hinterlands. Most of them were a combination of brown and white, although I did see this one ram that was sort of gold-colored. Something about it seemed off, but I couldn't put my finger on it before the creature looked me right in the eyes, then turned around and trotted away like it didn't think I was worth talking to. Which, I mean, rams don't talk, obviously, right? Oh, I almost forgot one other harmless critter I saw a lot of. The nug. Nugs are kind of like what you get if a mad scientist crossbred a pig and a rabbit and then dunked it in a vat of nair. Except they have fingers. Creepy, weird little fingers. I'm told some people eat them or keep them as pets. I'll pass, thanks. On the less gentle end of the spectrum, wolves are often spotted in parts of the hinterlands. Normally they don't bother people, but with all the craziness lately, they've been known to attack, so be careful. Warning. If you're bothered by spiders, close your eyes for a second. Because in a few isolated areas, you can find spiders you couldn't squish with a boot unless you had feet the size of a Honda. Supposedly, places where the veil is thin let magic leak into the world and turn normal spiders into these giant monstrosities. I mean, I love me some chain lightning, but if those creatures are part of the magic spells package deal, yeah, I might pass. Oh, okay, you can look now. The animal you need to beware the most, though, is one so common to the hinterlands that they're almost synonymous. Bears. The southwestern hills are full, and I mean full, of bears. On the ridges, in the valleys, out for a stroll, on top of the table outside your tent, full of bears. My guidebook warned tourists not to feed the bears. I would like to strongly reiterate this point, since it seems the main thing the bears wanted to eat was me, which was not cool. Anyway, that mostly covers the local wildlife. Mostly. One area on my map was labeled Lady Shayna's Valley, which I wanted to check out because Lady Shayna was a legendary warrior who fought alongside Calenhad the Great. She actually saved his life once. Unfortunately, she also loved him, something his wife didn't really appreciate, and would cause them all a lot of problems. I was hoping maybe I'd find some hidden statue or a bit of lore in a valley named after her, so off I went. Emerging from a narrow little tunnel, the first thing I noticed was the beauty of the valley. Colorful trees adorned green hills, with an outcropping of rock in the center surrounded by a small pond. I walked closer and found myself regarded by what, at first glance, I thought was an odd-looking dog. And then I got a better look as I heard the sound of wings overhead and realized that was no dog. It was a baby dragon, and its mama was probably nearby. Travelers, you may think that seeing a dragon in person would be super cool. And you would be right, all except for the bit with the abject terror for my imminent demise. To be honest, I'm kind of amazed I had the presence of mind to duck behind a pillar and send in my camera drone before hightailing it out of there as fast as my little legs could carry me. For some reason, as much as I enjoyed my time in the Hinterlands, it just seemed like a really good idea to move on to another destination after that. Join me next time when we'll cover the town of Haven and the Temple of Sacred Ashes. Thanks for watching. To see more travel highlights of virtual destinations, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's a game location you'd like me to visit, tell me in the comments below. If you enjoy what I do, feel free to support me on Ko-fi.com or check out my travel stickers, postcards, and other designs on Redbubble. Links are in the description. Safe journeys, and see you next time on Travel Rebooted.